Hi everyone, I am so glad to be back here in Oberlin, and I really want to thank the Decatur County Democrats for having me here and for putting this event together. So please give them a round of applause for doing such a fantastic job. And thank you all for being here and taking part in democracy. We're going to take democracy back, aren't we? So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Reinhold. I am a lawyer, a single mom, and until last year I was a proud public servant. And in early 2025, when DOJ came along and came into all of our federal agencies, they disrupted our systems, and I was one of the employees who was forced out. So at that point I had to decide what to do, and I had always been a public servant. I had always enjoyed public service work in the government or being a public interest attorney. And I decided to fight for Kansas and fight on the federal level from outside the executive branch. I'm running this race full time. You should know. I didn't get a new job. This is my job. I've had a few people ask me, what do you do now? Run for office, campaign, that's all I do. And committed to this, committed to being out there more than any other candidate, and I'm in this to win this. I have a great team. I've put together a wonderful team, and we are going to work together to meet as many of you as possible and meet as many other Kansans as possible and just get out there. We've already traveled thousands of miles, and there will be many, many thousands more, tens of thousands more, I'm sure. So, and I just want you to know, I want to be the kind of candidate and representative who will convince you that I will serve the entire district, unlike Tracy Mann. Serve this district in a way it deserves, and serve everyone throughout the district on our common interests, our common ground, like we talked about today. Like the title of what we're doing here, we are finding common ground and not just serving the Democrats in the East. Thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you today.
Thank you, Colin, you got 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Colin McRoberts. I don't have a prepared speech. I just want to talk from the heart about who I am and what I do because I'm kind of good at that. I do a lot of speaking because I'm a teacher. I teach business, law, and negotiation, and I do the same things, which is why I got in this race in the first place. I had never planned on being in politics, never thought seriously about politics, until a little over a year ago when I was out in Oakley watching a certain United States senator do about as badly at his job as a man could possibly do at a job that easy. If you saw a video of Roger Marshall turn tail and run away from you, that was my video. People have asked me a couple of times if I was the guy who asked the question that sent him out of the room, and I say, no, that was a different older gentleman with no hair and a bit of good size on him. But by the time I drove back to Lawrence, which is where I'm from, we had gotten calls from the New York Times, from CNN, from all these press outlets, can we use the video that leaked online? And I had to explain to all these reporters, well, this is what you expect in Kansas. We've got these Republicans who just treat this state and the district and every vote like it's their personal property. They're going to vote for me because I'm a Republican, and they're Republicans, and they'll do what they're told, so why would I need to show up and do a good job? And I was explaining to these reporters, well, this is exactly what you'd expect. He's making the rational choice for a Republican who doesn't care. Why would he disrespect from his constituents? And he can just turn around, walk away, and still get reelected. And I thought pretty seriously about running against him myself, and then took a look at the many fine candidates who are already doing that, and decided, no, there's another race that needs someone to stand up and really run a very, very aggressive campaign, because it's flippable. This is a race we can win. We have seen elections all over the country flip by large enough margins to make the first district competitive for the first time in living memory. That is an enormous privilege. It's a gift that's been given to us by Democrats all over the country. But it's not enough. It's a call to work, and it's a call to build. And that makes me so grateful for what Decatur County has done by putting this party organization together, by organizing in a way that gives us a chance to build something that will last beyond this election. Because what we're doing in this campaign is minting Democrats, going out to independents and Republicans and telling them there's a reason why your true home is with a party that cares about your farm, your business, your family, and doesn't treat you like property. That's what I'm here to do. And we've had a lot of success. I'm very pleased and very honored to say that I've been endorsed by Governor John Carlin. I've got some other significant endorsements, and I'm even working on independent and even some moderate Republican endorsements because we're seeing the coalition we have to build, not just to win this race, but build the Democratic Party to be stronger, healthier, more dominant, and more competitive in every election in the 1st District for years to come. That's the project we're embarked on. Winning this election is a means to an end. The end is transforming the 1st District. That's our strategy, that's our goal, that is what we are accomplishing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colin. Well, let's go ahead and turn our focus back to local matters. Colin, I'll start with you, and then I'll head to Lauren, and we'll kind of switch things around halfway through. But for Colin, question, what federal actions would you support to stabilize or reopen rural hospitals in Kansas, given ongoing closures across the state?
So there's a lot of answers to this, and a couple of them are very obvious and very important. Telehealth is useful, of course. We want to make sure we're establishing more mental health treatment across the facility, across the district, because of the suicide epidemic that's been talked about by a couple of candidates already. But I think there's an intermediate step that is critical to starting to stabilize rural healthcare and frankly healthcare everywhere else in the country. A couple of weeks ago, I was meeting with a former CEO of a hospital system in the district, and it's a wealthy gentleman who's got a lot of success in medicine and business. And I kind of expected his perspective would be, well, we need to go to more kind of commercial healthcare. No, his answer was, we need single-payer healthcare. We need a European-style social healthcare system. And I thought that's fantastic. You know more about this than anybody else. If you're on board with that, that is where we're going. But the intermediate step is Medicare for all. And the quicker step to that is improve the enrollment ages, improve the eligibility ages to start to ease into that, because that's where we start to get to more healthcare, more availability of preventative treatments, to make it more possible for people to improve their health before the critical elements. Sorry, thank you.
That's 30 seconds.
Oh, great, okay, then 30 more seconds of Medicare for all. First, lower the eligibility age, and then start to fund some of the access to clinics and access to preventative treatments, so we make sure that people can grow older in some security in their health and not worried about those last-minute treatments, emergency room trips, things like that. We've got to make sure those rural hospitals stay open, because they're going to be closing after the elections. A lot of those payments and programs have been staged to fall apart after the election, and that's going to be a disaster. Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you, Colin. Same question to you, Lauren. What federal actions would you support to stabilize or reopen rural hospitals?
Well, first of all, we have to reverse those Medicaid cuts in the big ugly bill. Those cuts are going to affect the bottom line in hospitals and adversely affect their revenue stream. I visited Decatur Health yesterday with a few other candidates, and they confirmed Medicaid is a big part of their revenue stream. And secondly, we need to reinstitute the ACA credits. Those credits helped make sure that Kansans could stay insured and thereby use the services. And will help, if they can afford to visit hospitals and clinics, then that will help keep them open. And I'm not opposed to a single payer or universal health system, but our first step to that is to create a public option. And a public option for insurance would help put downward pressure on the premium market, on the health premiums in the private sector. And it would allow people who are in the Medicaid gap, who can't afford ACA, allow them to be insured. The goal is to make as many people insured as possible and ultimately everyone insured to access. But it has to happen gradually. I know that this is going to be a very tough political climate, even if we can flip the House and Senate.
Very good, thank you, Lauren. Next question for Colin. How will you help Kansas attract new industries while protecting local economies from the boom and bust cycles?
So this is very much my comfort zone. Like I said, I'm a business guy. Business is what I do, business is what I teach. One of my first priorities going out into the district has been touring to talk specifically to businesses and to chambers of commerce. And those chambers of commerce exist to bring in new business and to bring in new industry, which is a solution to a lot of problems the first district faces, including underpopulation and too much focus on individual industries. That diversity of different industries is going to help a lot in many different ways. And the first thing we can do about that is elect someone who understands how important it is and cares. What I hear from business people all across the district is, because I ask them, how is the congressional delegation working for you? And all the time, I've heard this from 3 different people in just the last 2 weeks. You know who's great? Jerry Moran, because he shows up and does the work. Now, when Democrats tell me that, they don't like his politics. They don't like him. They just say, when I've got a problem, his people answer the phone and talk to me. The Republicans love his politics. They still like the fact that he does his job. Democrats and Republicans then stop. Nobody has ever said a word about Tracy Mann. Nobody has ever said he shows up. He doesn't do the job. He doesn't go out. He doesn't work. I'm a negotiator. I'm a business person. It's what I do. I will be there working with Kansas businesses to bring in investment, bring in additional employees, bring in new businesses. I'll be there as part of the business development meetings, part of the trade meetings, because that is literally what I do and what I have done for the past 10, 15 years with enormous success. I know how important business is to the first district because I am a businessman. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. All right, Lauren, same question. How will you help Kansas attract new industries while protecting local economies from boom and bust cycles?
Okay, well, first of all, the federal government can't fix everything, and attracting new business is a really important part of the state's work. And that would help protect local economies, obviously, if the state is taking on that responsibility, and I know they do some of that. But I don't believe the federal government should step on what Topeka should be doing. But here's what Congress can do. We can advocate and legislate for fair pay for fair work. We have to raise the minimum wage and create a living wage. That will help stabilize our local economies significantly. And Congress needs to do its job and be involved in tariff enacting, or repealing as the case may be. And additionally, the tax code needs some changes to help support small businesses with tax credits for employing people, for bringing people on. And additionally, on the family level, if we had a child care tax credit that would help families get to work, then they would fill those jobs. The jobs industry would know that there are people there to fill the jobs. And these kinds of things on the small level that the federal government can do more broadly to enhance what the state does to attract business can help even out the peaks and valleys of the boom and bust cycles. But local economic stimulus is a state issue and should stay with Topeka.
Perfect, thank you. All righty. Next question here, going to go back to Colin. What federal investments do you believe are most urgent for Kansas highways, bridges, and rail systems?
So 2 basic answers to that. One is, I really believe, and 70 does a fantastic job on this, but one thing we can do that will bring in additional tourism dollars, additional transportation dollars, all kinds of investment, is to improve the charging network across Kansas. A lot of people now are moving into electric vehicles, and it's something that'll do a lot to make it easier to get across North and South Kansas, do a lot to bring in business, bring a lot again to bring in that agro-tourism, and it's a relatively inexpensive investment that does a lot to improve things. I would love to see more rail corridors. That is a huge investment and a very long-term improvement, and I'm always looking for what can we do in the shorter term and the medium term. Separately, and this is something that I think is going to feature in a few of my answers, this is an area where we just need massively more investment in research, in science, and technology. Our universities do a ton of work to improve transportation corridors all over the state. They do a ton of work to improve loading and unloading policies, do a lot of work on the logistics. It's one of the things we do at the business school, and that takes research dollars. And some of that funding has been killed by incompetent members of the administration who are just looking for things to destroy that they don't understand. And we see that most often in biological research, but it also affects transportation logistics. And that's something we can do to bring back some of the strength of our logistical network And on top of that, I want to see also the infrastructure payments to improve the safety of bridges, improve the conditions of roads, improve even things like the snow removal, because a lot of that money has been promised for many years and has never really been delivered. How many times in the first Trump administration was it Infrastructure Week and it got derailed by some massive, disgusting scandal? Well, it's time to bring back people who actually care about infrastructure.
All right, thank you so much. Lauren, go ahead. Same questions. What federal investments do you believe are most urgent for Kansas highways, bridges, and rail systems?
Well, first of all, we have some good roads here in Kansas. I have family in Missouri, and I just drive on the Missouri roads, and I'll tell you, oh, it's a nightmare. But what we have now with our rail systems, which are quite old, and with our road systems, which we're good at keeping up with, is the result of two massive federal investments, the WPA and Eisenhower's Interstate Highway Bill. So with those highways, even though we have good highways, we need some improvements. We need to long-term look at expanding some roads. I'd love to see some shoulders in places driving around Kansas a lot. I'm seeing a lot of congested areas. I know you guys are experiencing them. And we do need to get to the deferred maintenance on our bridges. We have so many bridges that we need to get ahead of that and have those repaired quickly so that they're not disrupting traffic and that they're ready to go and we don't have to worry about long fixes later. Our rail system, it's really, we don't have a passenger rail system to speak of. I try to take it. I took it recently to Dodge City and there's constant delays. We need a passenger rail line or two or three and to keep also our freight traffic moving. We need significant expansion of rail and we're way behind the rest of the world on rail, as we know. So I really envision doing this. Obviously, this would all be very expensive, but I envision doing this as part of a rural New Deal, much like the WPA, much like the Interstate Highway Bill, that would tie into the people, that would help the people the generations who come after us. Thanks.
Perfect. All righty. Here, Lauren, we're going to keep it right with you. We have some audience questions here. And this one is a little bit personal for an audience member recently. If you're unaware, we have had here in Kansas anti-trans bills that have stripped the trans community of their driver's license. And so this question deals with anti-trans hate. They ask, what's your plan or solution to fight for the rights of the LGBTQ community and make them feel safe?
Well, I mean, this is a serious issue, and it's going to escalate, and we're going to have more and more sense of fear and safety. I know we have trans people who are afraid to live in Kansas now. On the federal level, if a bill came before me to support rights for trans folks so that we don't have a mishmash of laws where you can have identity one way in one state and your gender identity is different in another state. We need to fight for rights. And you know, this is about human rights. Trans rights are human rights, just like immigrant rights are human rights. And we need to stand up for it. Right now, this is a state issue. You know, the legislation that we're dealing with on the state level, but on the federal level, we need to stand up and say, we will not tolerate hate.
So I mentioned when I gave my opening remarks that one of my priorities is building a coalition with Democrats, independents, even moderate Republicans. That does not involve compromise on core values. And one of the core values that makes us Democrats is the inherent dignity of every human being. And one of the things I talk about when I talk to Republicans is the importance of that as a value we defend for the sake of defending it. It's not a tactic, it's not something we do to get elected, we do it because it's right, because we're not people who deserve to be in office if we're not willing to stand up for our neighbors. That is vital, and is one of the ways we articulate the values that, again, transform people into Democrats, into supporters, because they see that we actually have the values other politicians simply talk about. We also have to be able to talk to people who have been preached at in Kansas for decades with this attempt to turn neighbors against each other, including anti-trans hate. And that's a very difficult conversation to have. And I'm so grateful for my campaign manager who's here with me, who gave me a fantastic bit of thinking about this. At a speech in Salina months ago, she said, one of the ways you talk to somebody like that is you tell them, I stand with trans people. You may not. I can't make you. But shouldn't you stand with the people we could have helped if we had legislators who cared about real issues instead of bullying, instead of hate, instead of prejudice? Shouldn't you stand with the nurses and the teachers we could have hired with the money we spent attacking some of the least powerful people in the country? Shouldn't you stand with your neighbors? And that's true. That's what we can do. In terms of legislation, yeah, there's not a bit of difference between Lauren and I in terms of legislation we would sign, the moves we support in terms of civil rights. We're Democrats, of course we do. It's about how we talk about it. It's about the passion we put into it. Thank you.
Okay, and one more question from the audience here. As it is well known, Trump did kill USAID, which farmers rely on, as well as millions of dollars going towards research towards Kansas State University. What can be done to restore those funds? Lauren, go ahead.
First, yeah, okay. Well, first of all, when Congress appropriates money, that's how it's supposed to be spent. When Doge came in, we saw the opposite happen. We saw executive action override what Congress said and how Congress said money should be spent. Those bills have not been repealed. The bills concerning USAID. And so Congress needs to stand up and say, the laws we enacted need to be followed. On a logistical level, bringing back an agency from the dead would not be easy, but as your congressperson, I would demand that that be done.
So this is a high priority for me, and it's one that frankly gets me emotional. To the extent that I gave a speech in Salina a while back, I yelled a little bit about this, and I was explaining to my campaign manager, who's not of our generation, let's say, that I didn't want to be Howard Dean about it. And she said, who's Howard Dean? And I said, you're fired. But I got upset because it makes me upset. The last estimate that really had some quantitative effort behind it said as many as 2,000 children starved to death because we killed USAID. Tracy Mann held it down so that Elon Musk could kick it to death because he got suckered into some conspiracy theories about fraud that did not exist. There's a reason why there haven't been prosecutions. There's a reason why there hasn't been evidence of this fraud they justified that destruction with. It wasn't real. What was real was their effort to destroy a program that fed children with Kansas crops, and they let our crops rot on the dock instead of putting them in the hands of hungry children because it satisfied their conspiracy theories. And now Tracy Mann is bragging about how he's going to put the money back at USDA instead of state, and he wants to take credit for building a food aid program that Bob Dole built back in the day. I swear to God, if nothing else comes out of this campaign, I will not let Tracy Mann take credit when he is the champion of starvation in the U.S. Congress. We put that money back at the State Department where it belongs. We buy those crops here in Kansas where we make them, and we feed those children. And again, the way we do it is by caring about it, by yelling about it when it needs to be yelled at, because this is what matters more than almost anything else in this election. It's what kept Kansas farmers out of bankruptcy, it's what kept children fed across the world, and it will keep us on the right side of history again when we rebuild USDA. So, USAID. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, closing remarks. Lauren, go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you again all for listening to this forum, being here, engaging with us, and I really appreciate it. It is clear that Tracy Mann is not working out. He is not doing a good job as our representative. He's not listening to us. He's not in the district much, not traveling around talking to people in the district, not holding town halls, and he's not representing our interests, all of our interests. This district deserves a candidate who will be in the district, listening to people, representing our interests, representing all of our interests, our common ground. And a representative who's curious and humble enough to recognize that they don't have the answer to the problem and seek answers from the people, not the president. And that's the kind of representative I will be. I'll be honest with you, I don't have all the answers, but we will find the answers together and seek, and those answers will come from you all, not the president, not the Democratic Party, and definitely not from corporations. So I am that candidate for you who will be everywhere, be throughout the district, hold town halls, and work together with you, listening to you, gathering information, and coming up with solutions together. So thank you all so much for being involved voters. Spread the word and encourage others to get involved. That was a great speech you gave, Bill, earlier, encouraging everyone to really volunteer. I've been doing the same thing, encouraging folks. And please visit my website, visit my table, engage with me. I'm gonna be here through the end of the session and going to the vineyard tonight. And it's www.laurenforkansas.com. Once again, thank you to everyone.
So I spoke at the beginning about the value of the blue wave. We've got that going for us. We have a lot of powerful tools for this election, including a president who spends all day, every day, proving to people why we need Democrats in Washington, D.C. We need those tools because this is an incredibly hard fight. The last candidate followed, essentially, Lauren's strategy and lost by 40 points. There are not enough Democrats in the 1st District to win simply by telling Democrats, I'm a good Democrat. It's simply the fact. We need to build that coalition with independent voters and bring them in to the tent. Teach them not just that we have a chance to transform government in this election, but to keep them as Democrats and blue voters going forwards. That's my strategy here. Reaching out to the independents and even moderate Republicans and inspiring them to bring them across the table. Not changing our values, bringing them to meet our values. And we've had tremendous success doing that. As I said, I'm very pleased and honored to be endorsed by Governor John Carlin. He heard us speak at Washington Days, came up to me afterwards, and on his own initiative, offered an endorsement on the spot. I've had an endorsement from a social media star in Lawrence and 1.5 million followers across the country. We're reaching out to young people to build that coalition as well. That's what we have to do to achieve the transformation that makes the 1st District a purple district and then a blue district, because the roots are here. The progressive history of Kansas is here. This is where that progressive movement was born. This is a personal thing, but if you go to our table on the far end of the auditorium, I have a sword my wife gave me for our anniversary. She's very embarrassed that I'm speaking about this. She begged me not to, but I'm sorry, sweetheart, I had to. It's a replica of John Brown's sword from Potawatomi. And it means so much to me because that is the heart and the spirit of the 1st District of Kansas. That is when we fought for what was right, for real values. That's the inspiration. That's the heart. That's the fire that makes this election possible, makes the transformation possible, that changes this district. That's what we're accomplishing. That's what we're going for, and I want your help. ColinForKansas.com. Thank you so much.
All right, let's give our candidates a round of applause.